Warning: don't ignore this. If you believe Satan, do not continue reading, do not watch, do not even think for a moment that this is a game. Today, right now, something is reaching for you. Maya felt it the moment she unlocked her phone. The glow of the screen cutting through the darkness of her tiny apartment like a blade. The message was simple, stark, and impossible to ignore. God, Jesus, says, "Don't watch this if you believe Satan." She stared at it, frozen, heart hammering, skin prickling as if the words had been etched into the air around her. There was no username, no description, no link. Just the command itself, urgent and alive, almost breathing in the darkness. It was a warning, but one that felt intimate, like it was meant for her alone. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone, then hesitated. Why would a message like this find her? She didn't follow anyone. She didn't share these late-night videos. And yet, here it was, pulsing faintly on the screen, daring her to act, daring her to break the rule it demanded. She sensed immediately that this wasn't ordinary, that ignoring it would be a choice with consequences. She had always thought of herself as rational, logical, but the hair on her arms rose anyway, and she couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were on her. The room around her seemed to darken in contrast, the corners curling in shadows thicker than the night outside. She had no reason to believe in angels, no reason to think Michael, the warrior her grandmother had whispered about in bedtime stories, was real. And yet the words felt like the tip of a sword, slicing the air with urgency. If you believe Satan, do not watch this. Was this a test? A trap? Something far older than herself? She wanted to look away, to shut the phone off, to bury her head beneath the blankets and pretend the message didn't exist. But some primal part of her, some flicker of curiosity tangled with fear, refused. Her fingers hovered above the screen as if suspended by invisible strings, and she felt it then. The first ripple of something powerful, something alive brushing against her consciousness. The air in the room seemed to thrum with it, a heartbeat not her own. She shivered, her breath shallow. This was not a joke. This was not a glitch. Somewhere between the darkness of her room and the glow of her phone, light and shadow were converging, and she was standing right at the edge. Maya had a choice to make. Look away and pretend it never happened, or confront the message and whatever force had delivered it. But even as she hesitated, the words on the screen shifted subtly, forming new letters as if they knew her name. Maya, listen carefully. Her blood went cold. Something was calling her, warning her, and time was already running out. Maya sat frozen on the edge of her bed, the phone clutched in her hands as though letting go would allow whatever was calling her to slip through her fingers. The screen pulsed with the message again, this time in letters sharper, almost glowing as if lit from within. Don't ignore this. Your soul is at stake. Her breath hitched. She had never felt urgency like this, never felt words carry weight heavier than the air pressing around her. Something was watching, waiting for her reaction. Every logical thought fought to dismiss it as a prank or some elaborate viral stunt. Yet her instincts screamed that this was no ordinary video, no random message. She glanced around the room, shadows stretching and twisting in ways they never had before, corners folding over themselves. The faint streetlights outside did little to pierce the darkness inside. A cold draft whispered along her spine, brushing against her neck and making her hair stand on end. She wasn't alone. She could feel it. Not see it, not yet, but the sensation of eyes, countless eyes, hovering just beyond the edges of vision. The words had been a warning, but they had also been a summons. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to shut the phone off, to run from the weight of it all. But another part, a tremulous spark of curiosity mingled with dread, urged her forward. That spark whispered that she needed to see, needed to understand. And then, as though responding to her hesitation, the screen flickered, and a new message appeared. Michael is watching. He will protect you, but only if you choose the light. Her pulse quickened. Michael. The name conjured images from childhood stories her grandmother had whispered. Stories of angels, warriors of light battling unseen darkness. Maya had always thought them fables, comforting tales for bedtime. But now the name felt alive, tangible, a shield hovering just beyond reach. She realized, with a pang of fear and awe, that this was not a game. Something far older, far greater than she could comprehend, had chosen to reach her. The phone vibrated again, and she nearly dropped it. The message scrolled quickly this time, as though impatient. If you believe Satan, turn away. Now, if you choose the light, stay. Her fingers tightened around the device. She could feel the weight of choice pressing against her, heavier than her own body, heavier than the room itself. Somewhere, beyond the veil of ordinary sight, the battle was beginning. Light and shadow were already circling her, waiting for her decision. Maya's chest tightened, her mind racing. She knew one thing with absolute clarity. Ignoring this warning would be easier, safer, and yet impossible. Whatever this was, whatever force had sent the message, it was already entwined with her life. And now the first warning had arrived. Not in whispers, not in shadows, but in blazing letters that seared her conscience. There would be no turning back. Maya couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, the glow from her phone lingered behind her eyelids, casting shapes and shadows that seemed to move on their own. The apartment that had always felt safe now pressed in on her, walls shrinking, corners darkening, as if the shadows themselves had grown teeth. The air was heavier, charged, and she could swear she heard something. Soft, deliberate footsteps just beyond the bedroom door, though no one had entered. She gripped the edge of her blanket, heart hammering, trying to convince herself it was her imagination, that the fear was self-made. But deep down, she knew better. The warning wasn't just a message. It was a summons, a notice that the unseen was closer than she had ever imagined. Her phone vibrated again, but this time it wasn't in her hands. It had slid across the bed on its own, landing screen up with a new message blinking urgently. Look behind you. Now. Maya's pulse spiked so sharply she thought it might burst from her chest. She turned slowly, every muscle in her body screaming to flee. The door was closed. The room looked empty. Yet when she dared to glance at the mirror across from her bed, her own reflection seemed off. Her eyes were wide, frantic, but there was another presence behind her. A shadow pressing close, impossible to ignore. She swallowed hard, whispering, "Who's there?" The air responded with silence, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then, almost imperceptibly, a figure emerged from the darkness near the doorway. A shape, taller than any human, its edges hazy, shifting like smoke. Maya's mind raced. This had to be a hallucination, a trick of the light, a stress-induced dream. And yet, The air prickled against her skin, as though the figure carried a presence that was very real, very alive. Her phone buzzed again, vibrating violently this time, and the words on the screen burned into her. "Do not fear. Michael stands with you, but the intruder is near. Choose your faith." Her voice caught in her throat. Michael, the warrior angel she had thought was just a story, now felt closer than anyone she had ever known. The shadow shifted, approaching, and for a brief, terrifying instant, she felt its cold, intent brush against her soul. Maya stumbled back, tripping over her own feet, and the shadow recoiled slightly, as if aware of something greater protecting her. Her chest heaved with panic, but a flicker of clarity broke through the fear. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. She was being tested, and somewhere deep inside, she knew she couldn't run. The intruder was real. The unseen battle had begun. The room seemed to shrink further, darkness pressing from all sides, but she forced herself to stand tall, gripping the phone like a talisman. Whatever was coming, she understood one thing clearly. She could not ignore the warning. Michael was watching, and the intruder would not wait. Maya didn't sleep that night. The shadows clung to the corners of her apartment like living things, pressing closer with every flicker of the streetlight outside. She hugged her knees to her chest on the bed, eyes fixed on her phone, waiting for another message, another warning, anything that might tell her what was real and what was imagined. And then, just as the clock ticked past 3 in the morning, a new text appeared, one that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "Do not be afraid. I am Michael. I am here to protect you." Her hands shook so violently that she nearly dropped the phone. Michael. The name had always been a fairy tale whispered by her grandmother, a comforting story about angels and warriors who fought battles unseen. But now, reading the words on her screen, feeling the energy in the room thrum around her, she knew it was no story. She wasn't dreaming. Something had come for her, and Michael had come before the intruder could strike again. Suddenly, the room brightened, not with ordinary light but with a radiance that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. A presence filled the space beside her bed, warm and powerful, and in that moment Maya understood she was not alone. She could feel it in her chest, in her bones, in the very air she breathed. A guardian, a warrior, a being of pure light standing between her and the darkness. Her fear was still there, prickling along her skin, but it was tempered by awe and a strange, grounding sense of safety. The phone vibrated again. "The intruder seeks to tempt, to break you, but you have a choice. Focus on me. Focus on the light. Do not turn away." Maya swallowed hard. The words were urgent, commanding, but they also carried a strange gentleness. She could feel the invisible hand of protection, Michael's presence anchoring her in a storm she could neither see nor fully comprehend. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but no words came. Instead, a vision unfolded before her. Shadows moving like smoke across a battlefield of light, a towering figure in gleaming armor holding a sword of fire, striking down creatures she could barely recognize but felt in the marrow of her bones. She gasped. This was no hallucination. This was the battle the texts had been warning her about. She was witnessing the war between light and darkness firsthand, and it was happening right here, now, in the very room she thought was hers alone. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone, and she whispered, barely audibly, "I I choose the light. Immediately, the room seemed to hum with affirmation, the shadows recoiling slightly, as though they recognized her declaration. Michael's presence felt stronger, closer, anchoring her. She realized with dawning clarity that she was no longer a passive observer. The messenger had arrived to guide her, and the next steps she took would determine not only her safety, but the course of the battle unfolding around her. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, the warmth of Michael's presence brushing against her like a shield she could almost touch. Yet even as she felt that protection, a creeping doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind. The shadows in the corners of the room pulsed faintly, as though waiting for her to falter. The intruder had not vanished. It was only biding its time, testing her, pressing against her fear to see if she would succumb. The words on her phone blinked again, urgent, commanding, and impossibly personal. You must choose. Now, do not turn away. Her chest tightened. She had always been cautious, logical, someone who preferred to analyze rather than leap. But this was no ordinary decision. It wasn't a question of right or wrong. It was a question of allegiance. Every fiber of her being trembled as she realized the depth of the choice before her. To turn away would mean ignoring the call of light, the invitation of protection and guidance, leaving herself exposed to the unseen forces that sought to ensnare her. To stay meant risking the unknown, stepping fully into a confrontation she did not yet understand, yet trusting that Michael's presence was more than just comforting words. The room seemed to respond to her hesitation. Shadows stretched toward her bed, curling and twisting like dark fingers, whispering temptations she could almost hear, promises of ease, of escape, of ignoring the warning entirely. The intruder's voice, soft, seductive, almost intimate, slithered into her mind. No one can protect you. You are alone. Walk away. Turn off the light. Give in to what you truly desire. Maya pressed her palms against her eyes, her fingers trembling. She could feel the weight of the choice like a physical force, a tide of darkness pressing in from every direction. Then, just as her strength faltered, the warmth returned, brighter and stronger, radiating from her phone, from the air, from some unseen corner of the room. Michael's presence was undeniable, a tangible certainty amid chaos. She could sense the warrior angel standing beside her, a bulwark of light and power, offering safety if only she would commit. Her lips parted, a whisper trembling in the heavy air. I choose the light. The shadows recoiled instantly, as though stung by her declaration. The whispers ceased. A moment of calm settled over the room, the air lighter, the edges of darkness softened. Maya exhaled shakily, realizing that choice had already shifted the battle. She was no longer a passive participant. The intruder would still come, still tempt, still test, but for now, she had drawn her line, claimed her allegiance, and stepped into the first glimmer of protection the messenger had offered. The phone buzzed one last time, a single message burning onto the screen. You have made the first choice. Be steadfast. The next test comes immediately. Maya's stomach clenched. There would be no pause, no reprieve. The battle had begun, and she was standing directly in the center of it. Maya hadn't even had time to catch her breath when the air in the room shifted again. Colder this time, sharper, as though the darkness itself had teeth. The shadows that had recoiled before now pulsed with movement, stretching across the walls, twisting and curling as if alive. She felt it before she saw it. A presence pressing against her, oppressive, heavy, malignant. The intruder had returned, and this time it was not content to linger at the edges. She could feel it reaching for her, probing, testing for weakness, for fear to exploit. Her heart hammered, a frantic drum echoing in her ears, and she could sense that Michael was aware, close, vigilant, but not yet able to strike directly. Suddenly, a whisper slithered into her mind, low and seductive. "You cannot escape. You cannot hide. Give in and it will be easier. You do not deserve the light." Maya's hands shook violently as cold tendrils of shadow brushed against her arms, her legs, her chest. The apartment, once familiar and safe, now felt like a battlefield, the walls alive, the corners sharp with danger. Panic clawed at her throat, but beneath it all, a spark of defiance glimmered. She would not give in. Not yet. Michael's presence flared suddenly, a wave of warmth and light washing over her. She could feel him not in sight, but in essence. A shield, a protector, a warrior ready to intervene. The shadows recoiled slightly, but the intruder was cunning. It had learned her fear, her hesitation, and it struck at the moments she wavered, testing her resolve with whispers of failure and images of despair. Maya stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the bed, and the darkness surged, nearly overwhelming her. "Focus?" A voice echoed in her mind. Michael's voice, calm, commanding. "Do not yield. Stand." She closed her eyes, forcing her attention to the warmth around her, the anchor of protection that Michael offered. Slowly, carefully, she straightened, taking a deep, trembling breath. The shadows hissed and writhed, but her resolve hardened. She would not run. She would not falter. A sudden blast of light flared from the phone, washing over the room, scattering the shadows like mist under the morning sun. For an instant, she saw the intruder fully. A dark, shifting figure, more nightmare than man, clawed hands reaching, eyes hollow with malice. And then, almost instantly, it retreated, held at bay by the unseen force guarding her. Maya sank to her knees, panting, heart racing, hands trembling, and realized with a shuddering clarity that this was only the beginning. The first attack had come and gone, but the battle was far from over. Michael's presence remained, steady, patient, and powerful, reminding her that she was not alone. But the intruder would return, stronger, more cunning, and she would need every ounce of faith and courage to survive what was coming next. Maya sat on the edge of her bed long after the intruder had vanished, sweat clinging to her skin and her heart still hammering like a drum of war. The room had returned to its normal state, or as normal as it could be now, but the weight of what had just occurred pressed down on her like an invisible hand. Every logical explanation, every rational thought, evaporated in the face of what she had experienced. The shadows, the whispers, the presence of something so overwhelmingly dark. It was real, and Michael had been there, guiding her, protecting her, proving that the battle she had dismissed as myth was anything but imaginary. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, the message was longer, unfolding almost like a conversation rather than a warning. "You have seen what the darkness can do. You have felt its reach. Know this. Many ignore the signs until it's too late. You are being called to understand, to witness, to choose. The world is filled with shadows you cannot see. I will guide you, but you must learn to recognize them. Maya's hands shook as she held the phone, reading and rereading the words. They were not merely instructions. They were revelations, exposing a hidden layer of existence she had never known. Images flickered in her mind, memories she hadn't thought about in years, moments of doubt, of temptation, of choices that had seemed small but now shimmered with significance. She saw how easy it had been to ignore warnings in her own life, to shrug off intuition, to dismiss small signs. And suddenly she understood. The intruder was not just a single being. It was a force, a presence that thrived on distraction, fear, and disbelief. It sought the smallest cracks in faith, the tiniest moments of hesitation, and used them to gain ground. Michael's presence flared beside her, warm and solid, and she felt the words resonate deeper in her soul. The light and the darkness exist everywhere. You must see them, understand them, and stand with the light. Ignoring the warning will cost you more than fear. It will cost you your peace, your soul, your freedom. Maya closed her eyes, letting the truth settle in. This was not a single battle. It was the beginning of a war that stretched far beyond her apartment, far beyond herself. The warnings, the intrusions, the visions. They were all part of a test, a revelation that demanded clarity, courage, and unwavering faith. She felt a shiver of both awe and fear, knowing she could not retreat. To ignore what she had seen would be to invite darkness into her life, into the lives of those around her. She understood, finally, the gravity of the warning, the urgency, and the responsibility that had been placed upon her. And somewhere, deep in the room, she felt Michael's presence pulse in agreement. Steady, powerful, and unwavering. She was beginning to see. She was beginning to understand. Maya awoke with a start, sweat clinging to her skin, the memory of the intruder's reach still crawling along her nerves. The apartment was silent, but the silence was a lie. It carried weight, a subtle vibration beneath her feet, a whisper curling around her ears. She sat upright, gripping the edge of her bed, heart hammering, trying to anchor herself in reason, in logic, but it was slipping. Every rational explanation she clung to unraveled as the shadows began to move again. Slower this time, more deliberate, as if testing her patience and her courage. The intruder had not relented. It had merely grown bolder, more cunning, learning her rhythms, preying on the small cracks in her mind. The phone vibrated violently, the message flashing across the screen in harsh, urgent letters. You are being tested. They seek to confuse you. Focus on the light. Do not listen to the temptations. Now is when they strike. Maya swallowed hard, feeling a chill creep down her spine. She sensed the approach of something ancient, something patient and merciless, pressing against the edges of her perception. Her apartment, once a sanctuary, now seemed like the eye of a storm, the calm center surrounded by churning chaos. Images began to flicker in her mind, visions of herself failing, of loved ones falling, of shadows slipping through cracks she hadn't noticed. The intruder did not speak aloud. It didn't need to. Its presence was enough to ignite fear, doubt, and despair. Maya felt her thoughts twisting under the pressure, reality bending at the edges. Every fear she had ever buried rose to the surface, demanding acknowledgement, demanding surrender. The pull of the darkness was almost magnetic, whispering promises of release, of escape, of relief from the relentless tension that gripped her chest. And then, through the weight of it all, Michael's presence flared again, steady and radiant. She felt him not just at her side, but within her, a grounding force against the tide of terror. Stand. Do not fall. See through the lies. The darkness fears your faith. His voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the swirl of visions and whispers, a lighthouse in the storm. Maya's knees ached from the tension, her body trembling, but she forced herself to rise, to face the room, to confront the pressure that seemed to push in from every direction. She realized, with a shuddering clarity, that this descent was the first real test of her will. The darkness did not strike with brute force alone. It came in whispers, in doubts, in visions designed to erode her from within. She could not run. She could not hide. To survive, to stand with the light, she would have to confront every fear, every failure, every temptation. The intruder was patient, but she had chosen the light. That choice alone was her anchor, and it would have to be enough to carry her through the storm yet to come. The room shook with a tension that had nothing to do with the walls or the floor. Shadows leapt and twisted in impossible angles, clawing at the edges of Maya's vision, testing her courage, whispering lies meant to unravel her resolve. But she stood, trembling yet unwavering, gripping her phone like a talisman, a symbol of the choice she had made. Michael's presence flared beside her, strong, warm, and impenetrable, radiating a light that pushed back against the encroaching darkness. The intruder had returned, bolder now, more tangible, a shifting mass of smoke and malice with eyes like empty voids, reaching, stretching, demanding surrender. Maya's chest heaved, fear lancing through her veins. But she remembered the words flashing from the screen. Stand. Do not fall. See through the lies. The darkness fears your faith. She took a deep breath, feeling Michael's energy anchor her, and whispered aloud, I will not give in. I choose the light. The moment the words left her lips, the shadows recoiled, hissing like creatures scalded by fire. She felt a shift in the air, a change in the balance of power, subtle yet undeniable. The intruder surged forward, tendrils of shadow whipping toward her, trying to pierce her courage, to drown her in doubt and terror. But she raised her hands instinctively, and light, not her own, but Michael's, channeled through her, flared around her. The shadows screamed, writhing and retreating, as though encountering a force they had never dared challenge. Maya could feel the battle in her bones, in the tremor of her heartbeat, in the electric pressure of the room. She was no longer a passive witness. She was part of the fight, a participant in a struggle that transcended the ordinary world. Images flashed around her, visions of past fears, of regrets, of moments she had once ignored, all now drawn into the vortex of light and darkness. And yet, with every pulse, every surge of energy, she felt her resolve solidify. The intruder was strong, cunning, relentless, but it was not invincible. The power of the light, of Michael, of her own choice, surged through her like a current, pushing back the shadows, illuminating the room with a brilliance that made her gasp. Maya planted her feet firmly on the floor, shoulders squared, eyes blazing with determination. She knew the intruder would not stop, that more challenges were coming, more tests, more temptations. But she also understood now that standing, even in fear, even trembling, was itself an act of victory. The light could not be destroyed, not while she remained steadfast. For the first time, she felt the thrill of power and protection, the promise that she could endure, could overcome, could prevail against the darkness. The shadows shrieked and twisted one final time before recoiling, beaten back by the force of light radiating through Maya. She felt it surge from Michael, from somewhere deep inside herself, a power she had only just begun to comprehend. Her knees ached, her chest burned, and her hands trembled. Yet there was a clarity now, a sense of purpose that cut through the lingering fear. The intruder, the darkness, the whispers of temptation. All of it had been testing her, probing for weakness. And now, for the first time, she realized that the battle was not just around her. It was within her as well. Every choice, every doubt, every past regret had fueled the intruder's power, and by standing firm, by declaring her allegiance to the light, she had struck a blow of her own. The room, once a battlefield of writhing shadows, now glowed softly, the edges of darkness retreating like ink dissolving in water. Maya could feel Michael's presence solid beside her, a comforting warmth that radiated strength and protection. The phone buzzed once, and the message appeared, glowing steadily. "You have held the line. You have seen the darkness, felt its pull, and you have not fallen. Know this. The light will always stand with those who choose it." She exhaled shakily, tears of relief and awe running down her face. This was not just a victory, it was a revelation. She understood now that the intruder's power relied on fear, on hesitation, on surrender. To confront it head-on, to choose courage over panic, was to reclaim not only her own soul but a sense of agency she had never felt so profoundly. Images of past failures and missed opportunities swirled in her mind, but for the first time, they did not weigh her down. Instead, they became lessons, reminders of why she could not turn away, why the light mattered, why her choices had consequences far beyond her understanding. The intruder had tested her, pushed her to the edge, but she had endured. The breakthrough was more than just survival, it was transformation. She could feel her soul expanding, growing stronger, fortified by the unwavering presence of Michael and the unshakable knowledge that she had chosen rightly. And even as the glow of light settled around her, a residual tension lingered, a warning that the battle was ongoing, that more trials awaited. But for the first time, Maya felt hope, a deep and unshakable certainty that she could face what was coming. The darkness could strike, it could tempt, it could whisper lies and shadows, but the breakthrough had revealed a truth stronger than fear. She was not alone, she was not powerless, and the light would always fight alongside her. The room seemed to sigh, the shadows no longer clawing but retreating to the edges, subdued for now. Maya rose slowly, her body weary but her spirit unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. Maya stood in the soft glow of morning light, her apartment calm for the first time in days. But she knew the peace was only temporary. The intruder had retreated, but it had not been destroyed. Darkness always lingered, patient and relentless, waiting for the next moment of doubt, the next hesitation. She could feel it in the corners of her vision, in the quiet spaces between breaths, but now it no longer held power over her. She had learned to recognize it, to confront it, and most importantly, to choose the light. Michael's presence lingered beside her like an invisible shield, steady and unwavering, a constant reminder that she was not alone in the unseen war. Her phone buzzed again, and a new message appeared. Now, you must warn others. Many will ignore the signs. Many will fall because they do not see what you have seen. Pass this warning. Be their light. Maya's chest tightened. She understood the gravity of this responsibility. The warning had been given to her not merely as a protection for herself, but as a call to action. The message she had received, the tests she had endured, were all part of a larger plan. Others needed the knowledge, the vigilance, the courage to choose the light before the darkness reached them. She typed carefully, deliberately, sending messages to friends, leaving notes, whispering warnings in conversations that might have seemed ordinary. The words she sent carried weight, infused with urgency, with the clarity she had gained. Do not ignore this. Do not dismiss it. The darkness is real, and the light is your shield. Choose wisely. Stand firm. Michael watches over those who seek the truth. Each message was a spark, a chance to ignite awareness in others, to give them the same opportunity she had seized. Even as she moved through the day, the ordinary world resuming its familiar rhythms, Maya could feel the threads of the unseen war stretching far beyond her apartment. Shadows still lurked, whispers still slithered through corners of reality, but she faced them with steady eyes and a steadfast heart. The breakthrough she had achieved, the choices she had made, had prepared her to act not only as a survivor but as a messenger, a conduit of protection and hope. And as night fell once more, the city darkened outside her window, Maya felt Michael's presence flare warmly beside her, a silent promise of strength. She knew the battle would continue, that darkness would always seek to sway, to tempt, to destroy. But she also knew this truth with absolute certainty. Light, once chosen, never abandons those who stand with it. And now, it was her turn to pass that light forward, to warn others, to fight the unseen war in whatever ways she could, until the darkness had no claim, and the message echoed endlessly. God Jesus says, "Don't watch this if you believe Satan."